All right. Greetings. Welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected. How are you all doing? Um, Seems to be a lot of not unwelcome noise. All right. Maybe that's a little better. I can't tell. All right. How y'all doing? Good to see you. Welcome, all people. We're live on YouTube, Rockfin, and on Callin. And thanks for hanging out with me every day on all these said channels. What's up, Rockfin people? How are you? Rockfin is a really great place to watch the show. That's ad free, and you can watch the show for free. And you don't even have to sign up for an account. But if you do, you can also support the show by getting a monthly subscription and endorsing the show. That's also a good way to support the channel. But greetings, everyone. And let's start from the beginning, I guess. Starting off with something a little bit different today. The French have been protesting. We've been talking about it. We've been talking about the French protests regarding the raising of the retirement age. Luke Rudowski says the French protest strikes is something that is worth paying more attention to. Millions of people have fled the streets in France. Imagine if this was happening in the U.S. I guess this did happen in the U.S. on some level. So it's not unimaginable. But it's interesting the way that there are different takes on it. But imagine if this was happening in the U.S., how would the media respond? How would the government respond? How would this be covered? I wonder. And I guess it depends on the type of protest. We did have the George Floyd protests in 2020, which were, pretty major, pretty amazing. And I love protest energy, so I don't have a problem with any reason that somebody is out protesting their government. And I supported the reasons for the George Floyd protest. However, it's interesting that even though that was an important issue, if there were an anti-war protest or a free Julian Assange protest, or I could go down the list, right, of reasons why people would be out protest, climate change protest. How would it be covered? How would it be, some people think the George Floyd protests were encouraged, and maybe on some levels they were. I don't know. It seemed pretty organic. But it was weird that it was happening in the middle of a pandemic, where supposedly nobody was supposed to go outside, nobody was supposed to stand too close to each other. And you had the media kind of supporting this, on some levels, this protest, in the middle of a pandemic where everybody was supposed to stay home and lose their jobs and lose their businesses and not see their family and, not visit their loved ones or not have funerals or not, you couldn't do anything. So it was interesting that, I don't know. Maybe the media was just trying to get on the right side of the story. We'll give them some leeway on that one, But imagine if people were out protesting for, Medicare for all, or were protesting, an eventual rise in the retirement age. Imagine how would it be covered? What would they be saying about the people? Mostly how would it not be covered? All right. Hopefully that got rid of the crackling. How would it not be covered? And that's how I imagine it would go. They would not. I mean, they're not really covering these protests in France. They're not really showing people on the TV like, hey, there's people out upset with their government in France and they're out in the streets. They're not showing people that. They don't want to give anybody any ideas. And they're too busy painting, real anti-establishment protest, anti-government protest or anti-narrative protest or anti-whatever it might be. A real legitimate protest would paint as, something darker than that, right? Remember when Barack Obama absolutely stomped what was it called? What were those protests called? I can't even remember now. Occupy Wall Street. Obama absolutely stomped those protests and those protesters, and they were violently evicted from their places of protest. Violently evicted. That's how that would go. But we can't seem to muster up the energy for that. And I wish we would. This video has some text on it. It says, President Macron now says he will force through the reforms without a vote. Young people and workers are rising up in protest. Millions of people have fled to the streets of France to oppose the president's plan to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. Garbage collectors went on indefinite strike in protest, causing trash to pile up. Robin Hood energy workers cut power to wealthy suburbs. That's cool. And gave free power to schools, hospitals. Imagine if that happened in this country. Imagine if energy workers cut power to wealthy neighborhoods. I mean, imagine the thing is they paint, this kind of mobilization or organization and protest. They paint it as, they would do it. They would do like they did the protesters in Canada. They would paint them as Nazis, racists, Trumpers, bad people, the worst of the worst, the deplorables, the really bad ones. Right? That's how they do it. If we were out in the streets like this. And people are still too scared and complacent to even do something like this. To really let's go down the list of, getting rid of Citizens United, having how about free and fair internet? How about abolish internet censorship? How about creating the internet as a utility? We could start with things like that. Getting rid of the Smith Modernization Act. Not allowing Americans to be propaganda. I mean, there are so many things we could tackle, and we just won't do it. And yes, equal rights are important, but those are not the things that are really plaguing the society in America. I'm not saying those aren't problems, and those aren't problems that should be worked on, but that's not the end all and be all. That's not the highest priority. The highest priority would be like supplying people with, living wages and food and houses and stuff and medical care. And that is all people, right? That would benefit all people, all the people, everyone. I mean, all this talk about equity and diversity and all that stuff, and the Biden administration is planning on cutting SNAP benefits. They're squashing unions. They're poisoning communities, and I'm telling you right now, it's all of those things that they're doing are actually hurting people of color. So all of that equity nonsense that they're talking about is just that. It's nonsense. They don't really care about people. They don't really care about people of color. They don't really care about equality. All of that is just for show. And trying to get you on their side by saying, well, anybody who opposes this is a racist, Trump, or Putinist. And it works on some people. It works on some people, but that's not the problem. Racist, Trump, or Putinists are not the problem in this country. Right? The things that are hurting people, hurting those in need, hurting the least among us, hurting the people, working people of the country, hurting the poor of the country, hurting people of color in this country, hurting working women in this country, hurting children in this country. The things that are hurting all of those people are the problem. Which the government at large will not address and will not change and will not give you any satisfaction on. They're squashing unions and then trying to bring Chris Smalls to the White House as a hero, as a working class hero. Well, that's just all for show, right? Oh, hey, look how we support unions and black people fighting for their rights. That's bullshit. They're actively trying to squash unions. They're supporting the squashing of unions all over the country, which hurts black people. But they bring Chris Smalls to the White House. Oh, you made it through. All right, come on in and give us a photo op so we look like the good people. They're just full of malarkey. I don't know. Yeah, I saw that. Creative experiments. That's the Fed just raised interest rates again after we're on the brink of an economic collapse, and most economists. Most people who know anything about anything are like, well, they probably shouldn't have raised the rate so fast. Right? When we already had, an oversupply of money, and, we had this problem building for a really long time, and then they went, oh, let's just jack up the interest rates. And most economists would say, yeah, that was probably maybe not as fast as they did it. That was probably not the thing to do. And now they're going to do it again. As banks are collapsing, they're going to raise the interest rates again. That'll be great. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for the super chat, Tor. Tor says, evening here in Sweden. Howdy. How to do, Sweden. Anyways, but they're going for it in France, and they know how to alert their government that people aren't happy. And if I'm betting in the way that they are responding to what Macron is doing, and Macron's attitude towards it, it's Macron will not be long. I mean, Trudeau won't be long in Canada. People don't like Trudeau. And he's revealed himself, he's revealed his true face. So I don't think Trudeau is long for Canada. And probably Macron is not long for France either. There's one more, I think, about France. Citizens use tractors to block water cannons. Nicely done. Yeah, they're blocking those those tractors out there hurting the water cannon's feelings. Those the people that are up to the bad things, and there people are in the streets in France, like in a real way, and nobody's talking about it here. No, our media is not. We're not talking about it. We're not covering it. Mum's the word. Don't want to give anybody any ideas. And if we did talk about it, if our media did talk about it, certainly they wouldn't do it in a way. They'd project something onto it, like these are. They'd probably do something stupid like these are they've been radicalized by pro-Putin social media or something really stupid like that. They'd go for that. I'm sure they would. They've already done it. But how long? I mean, it won't be. What actually needs to happen is that there's still too many people here asleep, and too many people who watch CNN and oh yeah, whatever they're saying, yeah. Too many people entrenched in believing, what the system has to tell them about the system. But there are way more. The majority of people in this country understand and know that is a falsehood, and there will be a tipping point. I think the tipping point is soon. I can't imagine. I mean, you did have Occupy Wall Street happen when the banks collapsed, and the response to it was like, what? And this was after 8 long years of George W. Bush. And people were very unhappy, and I can't see it. People just sitting around and letting things get much worse. I don't know. There's smoke from a fire in a plant in Pasadena. No, I don't know anything about that. It is raining here. It just is nonstop raining. So, and has been for more than 24 hours. So I don't know. That's actually probably a good thing if there's a fire somewhere. It will be tamped down by the rain. Not that it's good that there's a fire. Denver Attaway says not on BBC News. The Saint Nazaire Bridge, the longest bridge in France, blocked since 6 a.m. this morning. The gantry is broken and roads are blocked. So creative experiments, yep, going 2 weeks until economic collapse. I mean, it is not unlikely, right? What up, Rock Fanats? How you doing? You're having Rumo says is having computer issues. Sorry. Osama says CBDCs to track you more. Oh, I have something on that. Did you hear about Christine Lagarde getting spoofed by a comedian playing Zelensky? Sorry. She got duped by a Russian comedian hacker pretending to be Zelensky, and she was very forthcoming about a digital euro. Y'all want to hear this?
I know there are many protests in Europe against the electronic euro. What is the reason?
We have to be ready.
No, the problem is they don't want to be controlled. They don't want to...
Yeah, but you know what? Now we have in Europe this threshold. Above 1,000 euros, you cannot pay cash. If you do, you're on the grey market. you take your risk. You get caught, you are fined, or you go in jail. But you know, the digital euro is going to have a limited amount of control. There will be control. You're right. You're completely right. We are considering whether for very small amounts, you know, anything that is around 300, 400 euros, we could have a mechanism where there is zero control. But that could be dangerous. The terrorist attacks on France back 10 years ago were entirely financed by those very small anonymous credit cards that you can recharge in total anonymity.
Oh, we don't like anonymous money. We can't possibly have anonymous money. And that's, you know, that's how they're going to try and usher it in. I mean, they've been trying to do that with Bitcoin and, you know, cryptocurrency. Oh, that's what criminals use. Yeah, criminals also use regular money way more than they use cryptocurrency. So, nice try. But they're trying it. And, you know, they want to track everybody's money in order to, you know, keep everybody safe, secure. But, of course, if they lose some money, if they lose trillions of dollars, if they, you know, then, the records, you know, we lost the floppy disk with the records. We lost the CD-ROM with the records on it. We lost the thing with the computer. We had a power outage at the you know, at the server plant, and we just lost the information, you know, and a bunch of money along with it. We don't know where it went. But we want to track all the dollars that you use, okay? Does she look like she looks like the she looks like a dead ringer for the fashion designer lady in the Incredibles cartoon? Yes, darling, yes. She looks exactly like that lady. Meanwhile, we've got yeah, some people give me some updates in the chats. Thanks. There was a chemical plant in Pasadena that exploded. I mean, I didn't hear some, didn't see some. Huh. Fire extinguished at INEOS chemical plant. Huh. I can't see anything about this. One person was transported to the hospital. This is Pasadena, Texas. But this is happening in Pasadena, Texas. When you said Pasadena, I thought you meant my town. But dang. Liquid petroleum gas was being transported from one tank to another. There was an explosion, large flames. Here, I guess you guys can see this. Dang. Yeah, that's where they got all the good chemical plants down there. Houston to New Orleans. Yeah, there's several Pasadenas. I think there's a Pasadena, Maryland, too. Isn't there? It's Pasadena, CA, TX, and I think MD, if I'm not mistaken. But I may be wrong about the last one. What else? Denver says there's an explosion in Louisiana. I can't see. I can't find it. But, the Brave searches aren't good. Oh, a leak. Chemical leak. Louisiana. Let's see. Still cannot see it. I don't know. The AHOGs? Obsolete optics? What? I don't know. What is AHOGs? Did I miss that one completely? Sorry about that. I don't know. All right. Let's keep going. Osama says the coolest thing about Occupy was you can get a haircut, food, medical care for free. No wonder they shut it down. Yes, they don't like that. They don't like that. They don't like people feeding people, right? They don't, The authorities often mess with food, not bombs. Denver, a chlorine plant just rebuilt and put back in operation in November 2022, now leaking chemicals. Jesus. The hits just keep on coming. All right. In California, things are a bit nuts. And this is a highway that is completely washed out, Highway 6 in Northern California. I'm not sure about the city. Maybe he says it. This video is loud, though. The sound is loud. It's not very... I'm out here in Corcoran, just south of Corcoran. Highway 6. So I'm going to turn the sound off just because it's just wind against the microphone, which is not a very pleasant sound. Anyways, there's in the background. Well, there's an entire highway washed out. In the background, there are houses, or structures that are way underwater, and this is why we talked about a bomb cyclone hitting Northern California in the Bay. They're saying this is more in Santa Cruz and into the Bay Area, San Francisco. An incredible display of atmospheric power is on display in Northern California as the Fujiwara effect occurs, slingshotting mesovortices onto the coast. Severe thunderstorm warnings have been issued for Monterey and Santa Cruz for destructive winds up to 80 miles per hour. This is from yesterday. Yeah. And it has been pretty massive. Again, luckily there's nothing, that destructive going on here. But in Northern California, they're getting the worst of it. We got another really good dump of snow, though. Again, here's another look at this unbelievable satellite imagery of one of the most intense March cyclones on record for California, with the eye of the storm making landfall near San Francisco. Yeah, Poppy Davis, slingshot atmospheric river, a new climate term. Exactly. So that is happening. Peter Dines says the madness of the current growth-based system using massive amounts of CO2 to address a problem caused by too much CO2. Exactly. French ski resort uses helicopters to deliver snow for bare slopes. Right? I mean, again, I enjoyed the protest energy, and I fully support what people are protesting in France, but there's no snow on the Alps in France. They have had an almost snowless winter in a lot of places in Europe, or very, very little snow. After a summer where all the rivers were extremely low, and they're in now a multi-year drought, and people aren't out in the streets going, "Hey, y'all gonna stop? Y'all gonna stop with this industrial civilization?" Someone else below this posted a pretty good link about we talked about this before. Oil companies are planning to use chilling devices to refreeze permafrost so that they can build pipelines, right? They're like, the permafrost is melting, and it's, getting in the way of us building more pipelines to deliver the oil to you. So what we want to do is use the oil that we're delivering to you. We're going to burn some of it and refreeze this permafrost so that we can keep the ground stable. If that's not a, snake eating its tail situation. Hormunculus says, we've had no precipitation across the winter at all. And Olympians are worried about winter sports. Indeed. They're planning on banning your personal vehicles. I mean, I don't know. And Genevieve Gunther posting this. For the first time in IPCC history, a headline statement declared that the world already has too much fossil fuels in production to limit global warming to the relatively safe level of 1.5 C. This is a very big deal. In other words, just kind of saying there's no guardrail, There is no guardrail. For 1.5 C. And it's kind of what people are, slowly kind of admitting. All right, already. The new UN climate report airs the dirty truth about fossil fuels. As a global body of scientists put it, projected CO2 emissions from existing fossil fuel infrastructure without additional abatement would exceed the remaining carbon budget. I mean, we don't even need the infrastructure for that. That's the other thing. That's the thing that they're not telling you. It's nice that they're telling us this. But the thing that they are not telling you is that it doesn't matter whether we got rid of it or not. It's already a done deal. The latent heat effect, right? It's already a done deal. The carbon we have already released into the air and that has already been sucked up by the oceans is already enough carbon to push us past 1.5 to probably 3. That's what they are not telling you. But she's trying to, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of nothing's happening at all or everything's going to be fine if you just buy an electric F-150. Somewhere between that and we're screwed either way. You have Genevieve Gunther trying to kind of, I don't know, get it in the middle there somewhere. World leaders have hidden behind more nebulous reductions of emissions, pollution produced by fossil fuel energy combustion, along with, to a lesser degree, other human activities such as mining and agriculture. To a lesser degree? In this, I don't know. In this way, these leaders have sustained the fiction that they can support ongoing fossil fuel extraction yet still abide by their country's climate commitments. I mean, none of these climate commitments are binding, nor will they be met. Again, it's kind of like the talk of equity. Equity. Right? All this talk of equity and equality and fairness, and it's not there. It's just a mirage. It's a mirage meant to make you feel better. Oh, we're doing something. When they're actually doing the opposite of what it is. You know the thing. The drill these days is to name a thing the opposite of the thing that this thing is supposed to produce, right? And, like the Patriot Act or the Inflation Reduction Act or whatever it might be. Again, like the Puppies for Grandma Act. We hereby declare that all grandmothers will get free puppies. And what the act actually says is there will be federal agents coming to your door to steal any puppies that belong to your grandmother's, rightfully owned or not, right? That's how it works these days. Case in point, I'm going to read exactly what I just said. This article backs up what I just said. President Joe Biden, for example, signed the Inflation Reduction Act. Well, this is not talking about inflation, but about supposedly the Inflation Reduction Act was supposed to be a huge step forward in reducing the effects of climate change. Signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which gives tax breaks to clean energy producers and consumers, but he also recently approved Chevron's application to build enormous oil drills in some of Alaska's last untouched public lands. There were also subsidies for fossil fuel companies in that act. So, anyways, they passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and what's happening? I think there's a lot more inflation going on, but they just keep on coming out and saying, "Good news, good news, good news." Inflation's at really low. No, it's not. Everybody knows it's not. They can see that inflation is out of control. Inflation is an out-of-control, wild-eyed Karen just running rampant through your life. And there's no it's under control. Anyways. The Inflation Reduction Act did not curb inflation, and also was supposed to help climate change, and it is not helping climate change. Is actually a giveaway to. So it's just not, pangolins for grandma. I think a lot of grandmas did get pangolins. Or the kiss of a pangolin. I don't know. I think that's what they got. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. This is something, I'm not going to get super into this, but just on the surface, this seems like, oh, is that why a lot of drinking water is radioactive? Study confirms nitrate, which is a fertilizer, can release uranium into groundwater. Nitrate, a compound common in fertilizers and animal waste, can help transport naturally occurring uranium from the underground to groundwater. This is from a study from phys.org. So that's not concerning. 8 years ago, the data was sound but only suggestive. The evidence strong but circumstantial. Now, the University of Nebraska Lincoln's Kerry Weber and colleagues have experimentally confirmed that nitrate, a common compound in fertilizers and animal waste, can help transport naturally occurring uranium from the underground to groundwater. Their new research backs a 2015 Weber-led study showing that aquifers contaminated with high levels of nitrate, including the High Plains aquifer residing beneath Nebraska, also contain uranium concentrations far exceeding a threshold set by the Environmental Protection Agency. Yay, yay, yay. Puppies for grandma. Or pangolins for grandma. And some naturally occurring uranium in your groundwater. How about that? Uranium concentrations above the EPA threshold have been shown to cause kidney damage in humans, especially when regularly consumed via drinking water. Dang. You know that in a lot of places drinking water is very radioactive, like in Houston. And I mean, there are a ton of cities that register highly radioactive drinking water. Could this be one of the reasons? Oh, obsolete. You want me to send you this? Sure. Let's put it in the Rockfin chat, shall we? Oh, you already did it, Osama. Sorry, you're on that one. My bad. I'm too slow to the punch. Anyways, there also was a meeting, to skip to something else. You know that Putin and Xi Jinping met in Moscow amid the Ukraine war. And a big topic. Oh, Rockfin links don't work for you. Do you want me to send it in the... I can't send it in YouTube, right? Excuse me. All right, yeah, I'll send it to you on Twitter. Let's see. Where are you on Twitter? Why won't you come up? Why won't your name come up? Oh, there you are. All right. I just sent it. Oh, I can link in YT. Okay. All right. Anyways, yeah, and there. So one of the big topics was a peace or ceasefire agreement, which the U.S. was like, no, absolutely not. No, we cannot do that because Putin will rearm and attack again. I think his stated objectives were to denazify the Ukraine and to protect the people of Donbass. Were some of his stated objectives. I don't think he had any other ones. Anyways, they met, and it's interesting what they said at the end of this article, though. They were like, Western countries have warned that China may be considering supplying Russia with lethal aid. Oh my God. Such as weapons and ammunition, going beyond the assistance it has already provided. And that would be very bad, very bad. But what are we sending to Ukraine? What have we sent to Ukraine? Lethal aid. We're sending them arms. I mean, it's funny how how hypocritical our media could be. And how we make it seem, lethal aid. Oh, if they did that, that'd be crossing a line. But we're sending billions of dollars in armaments and weapons to the Ukraine. So if somebody else did the same for Russia, what do we have to say about it? Nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. I know it's a war, and you're on one side, you're with us, or you're against us. You're on this side, or you're on that side, or whatever. But, I don't know. But here's another concern. They're worried about lethal aid, and UK said that they are shipping uranium, or what is it? Uranium, or is it depleted uranium shells, right? They use them to tip some weapons, and it's fairly disgusting. But the UK, I think, at the behest of the U.S., is sending depleted uranium shells to Ukraine. Oh, well, that's okay. That's all right then. We're worried about China sending lethal aid to Russia, but we're sending depleted uranium shells. Here you go, guys. This'll do the job. Andre says rumors are that NATO is planning a massive attack on Russia in 2 weeks. Wow. I mean, that would be something. Yeah, and then so okay, so they're sending depleted uranium shells to Ukraine, and obviously, Putin's not happy about this. And this is this is an escalation. We're sending lethal, real super lethal aid to Ukraine, and Russia's like, oh, that's not good. We're not happy about that. But oh my God, if Xi Jinping sends lethal aid to Russia, that would just be crossing a line. I mean, this is war. We're one side or the other side. You got to be on one side, I guess. I don't know. In response to UK's announcement that they will be sending shells with depleted uranium to Kiev, Putin says Russia will be forced to respond accordingly. Yikes. And a lot of people are very nervous about this kind of talk and about these kinds of escalations. Russia harassed our very sensitive, drones with their sensitive feelings and emotions. We're gonna have to retaliate. Yeah, okay. I mean, it does look like the posturing of children, does it not? Today it became known that the United Kingdom, through the deputy head of Ministry of Defense of this country, announced not only the supply of tanks to Ukraine, but shells with depleted uranium. This is Putin speaking. It seems the West is... Oh, sorry. Let me go back. It seems the West really decided to fight against Russia to the last Ukrainian, not in words, but in deeds. In this regard, I would like to note that if all of this happens, then Russia will be forced to react accordingly. And I don't know how many times Putin has said something like this. Several times. Depleted uranium is a dirty bomb. Yes, it is. It's actually, it's a war crime. Using depleted uranium shells is a war crime. But they still do it. And is anybody going to, send an arrest warrant out for the Biden administration or the United States Department of Defense? Is that going to happen from the ICC or some other international body? It's a war crime. All right. Oh, William, I'm sorry I missed your call. I was about to take your call, but we got Gator on the line. Gator. Can't hear you, Gator. Are you
Hi,
there?
can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm just wanted to sort of chip in a bit and on this whole UK thing because
All right.
right, basically the way I pass this is that you need to look at all of the rhetoric about weapons shipping and compare it directly with the reality. And we've already seen now that since the initial wave of all of the weapons that were sent, javelins and all that crap, and at least 30% more or more of it was stolen, right? And has gone the way it's gone, and a year later, Ukraine is essentially being hammered. Okay, so the weapons are not ultra decisive, right? They're a big part of the game, but they're now not a decisive factor. It's manpower, right? And
Yeah.
that manpower is being killed faster than it can be replenished, and so Russia is just grinding on, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you look at this particular story about the depleted uranium, it's basically a headline. So the UK is saying it's going to send 14 Challenger 2 tanks with depleted uranium shells for those tanks. 14 tanks in a front that's 1,000+ kilometers long
Right.
is
Right.
essentially nothing, right?
Sure.
And so, obviously, once you get a statement from the UK that is escalatory, the only thing that you can expect from Russia is a counter-escalation in statement of force. It says, "Well,
Of course.
if you threaten us, we'll threaten you," right?
Right.
And that's just a natural dialogue in the media that you have to expect, right?
Yeah.
Because Russia wants to create the retaliatory narrative room that matches any escalatory threat that's delivered by the other side. That's all that's going on here.
Sure.
And I believe that what's going to happen, you're already seeing that tanks-wise, all of those, there's about 100 tanks promised in the last promise of tanks. The actual numbers that are being delivered are a fraction of that because everybody's going, oh shit, our tanks are too old. No, that we can't do that. Oh, we don't have enough. And politicians are just making hollow promises that the military's forces underpinning them can't make. So, you know, it's rhetoric well ahead of reality. And ultimately, I think the thing to watch is that when reality strikes and we see the French light tanks are just being delivered now. They've got a 105mm gun. That's unlikely to be able to get through a T80 or a T90's armor, particularly with reactive stuff. And those light French tanks literally can be destroyed without depleted uranium. It's just fucking artillery strikes on those things will destroy them. So it's just theater in a way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. There's just a lot of posturing going on, and even the drone story was, when I first saw the story about the drone being harassed over the Black Sea or whatever, I was like, I immediately jumped to the idea that it was not a real story, or something else happened there, and they just had to blow it up into something like, oh, they harassed our drone. We're gonna have to do something, and to get all the talking heads on the TV going, oh, we've got to retaliate, we've got to do something, we've got to send more planes, and we got to shoot down, every plane we see in the Black Sea because that's our sea, right? That's where our drones fly. I don't know. It is an unfortunate situation. It does look like the Ukrainians also are actually suffering, pretty badly, which the Western media won't let on about, right?
Yeah, but also, if you look at accounts of battles, even going back as far as when Russia retreated and Ukraine took ground, even in the WAPO then, they were literally carrying lines of quotes from soldiers in that wounded in the battle, saying, even though we took that ground, the artillery fire that we encountered as we advanced over open, unoccupied territory we were suffering losses at a ratio of 5 to 1. That was being said in August by troops quoted in the WAPO or the New York Times, right?
Yeah.
So there have been, and there are increasing amounts of admissions through the Western mainstream media of how bad the situation actually is. And the reality is, you don't know the truth, but you know enough that you know that Ukraine is having the shit kicked out of its manpower. That's why it's got. If you look at any of the other sources of information, you'll see that they're in about the 8th or 9th round of forced draft, where they're taking 18 to 65-year-olds, and they are literally just arresting men.
I've seen some video of that, of just people getting tackled on the street and taken away. Like, you're in the army now. Jeez.
Yeah, but you know also that one of the sticking points of Hungary now is it's saying that it is illegal for Ukraine to have captured Hungarian national males who happen to live in Western Ukraine, who are not citizens of Ukraine. And they have captured them and press-ganged them into the service in the military. That's totally illegal. That's abduction of a foreign national, right? And Hungary has said that's got to stop. That's one of the reasons why it's now saying we will never support NATO absorbing the Ukraine. That's a contributory factor.
Right.
So the Ukraine is desperate. Now, my anticipation of what you're going to see is this. There is no real reason why Russia should, on a military basis, stop what it's doing and negotiate. I believe that it's more likely that Russia, knowing that it is winning, will continue to grind as much of Ukraine as it wants, whilst at the same time China plays a role of trying to look like a vocal peacemaker, encouraging peace, but they will only allow that to really the process to begin once Russia says to China, we've got as much as we want, right? Which will be something like the entire land bridge to Odessa plus a 100-mile buffer to keep weapon strikes away, like a Korean solution for Ukraine. That's what I anticipate is going to happen. And once that is established, then China and Russia will essentially say, now it's time for talks. And once the talks are initiated under that basis, there will be no leverage that the West can provide to get anything else given to it by Russia. It will just essentially be a form of like, yeah, shit, we've got to say yes to this.
Yeah, but
and that will be roughly how this kind of comes to end one, but it won't be the end.
Well, do you think that they're going to agree to that? It doesn't look. I mean, at the moment, their posture is, absolutely not. We don't negotiate with terrorists, right? That's kind of their posture.
But we always negotiate with terrorists.
Right, I know, but that's the opening line is we don't negotiate with terrorists, or absolutely no way. We will not have a ceasefire. We will not agree to any of their gains that they've made, territorial gains. I don't know. Do you see them agreeing to that, or do you see NATO? Somebody in the chat said NATO was going to do a big movement on Russia in a couple weeks. What do you think? Either one of those are.
So the problem with NATO is that NATO, as soon as a NATO force officially goes in, we know that is formally World War III, right? We're already in. That's the formal admission of World War III, right? And Ritter, Gregor and Beletic and other military analysts who have actually been net basis right point out that you can't cross that line, right? You can't politically cross that line because NATO doesn't have a legitimate reason to enter Ukraine because Ukraine is not a NATO member. So Article 5 doesn't apply. So that's why you've got provocations where you're going, if Russia attacks Poland or Hungary or whatever, or accidentally or premeditatedly,
or false
flaggedly, has a pretext to go in.
Right.
Yeah, but Russia is careful to not cross that line. So, what NATO is in, the real problem NATO's got is take any NATO force and say, how much manpower and weaponry do you actually have to deploy? I'll give you Britain's public statement is this: Britain anywhere can only deploy about 5,000 combat troops and the support for that anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You put 5,000 British frontline combat troops into Ukraine, they won't last a week, right? Now, even if you take 20 countries in NATO, all cycling 5,000 to 10,000 people into a combat arena inside Ukraine, that is still a fighting force of, okay, maybe 200,000 people, but you're never going to get that. I mean, I'm being generous with numbers here, and you're never going to get that at the drop of a hat by the summertime. It'll be cycled in slowly. Russia will just continuously, grind through it, right? And then mobilize more forces because it's already got about 1.5 million on the hook, right?
Right.
So it's just not going to go that way. I'm absolutely certain it's not going to go that way.
Well, and also I think the idea that NATO is a unified front, and that I mean, yes, the governments are like, sure, we're all in this together, but man, it's very unpopular, right? I mean, it's unpopular here.
Okay.
The war is unpopular here, but it's pretty unpopular in Europe, right? People are very, they're very dejected about this situation, right? And so I don't see it happening.
One thing to bear in mind politically that isn't completely obvious on the surface, but I'm certain that this is what's happening underneath. The Nord Stream story by Cy Hirsch is a deliberate form of control or intervention by several people inside the chain of command in the US, right? Who instead of waiting to hope that nuclear war doesn't happen because somebody at the bottom of the firing chain decides not to fire the weapons because the order's not right or it generally they don't want to die, they've intervened earlier by undermining the entire political position of the US in relation to Europe by releasing enough of the story for Cy Hirsch to publish. And what's happening politically underneath in Europe is this. All of the European governments have now had their trousers pulled down and been exposed as vassal states of the US because they've actually staying silent about an attack they know the US did to the whole of the European bloc. That means that politically, all of the people in the European citizenry who've read this story are now looking up at their governments going, are you fucking kidding? You're literally staying silent whilst we've effectively been directly attacked by our parental ally, and our gas prices have shot up by up to 10x compared to pre-invasion. What the fuck? And that is causing major political turmoil below the surface of Europe, which means that Europe cannot continue for much longer to support the US, because essentially the US looks like a rapist, and we look like the victims. You can't maintain that facade for very much longer, and that's causing a collapse of the unity to continue to prosecute war inside Ukraine. Yeah.
Well, hey man, thanks for the insight, and I appreciate you calling in. Yeah, I got to wrap up the show, but
take it easy, man. All the best.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Just lastly, before I end the show, there's a clip of soldiers in Ukrainian soldiers saying that they have no confidence in their command, and they refuse to further hold Bakhmut. They have no equipment, no reconnaissance, no communication, and they're cannon fodder for the proxy grinder. They're not just taking people off the streets to join the army, but the people that are in the army are like, we don't want to do this anymore. That's not good. All right, guys. Thanks so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I appreciate you. I'll be back tomorrow at the regular time of 12 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, not Standard Time, Daylight Time. And thanks for hanging out, guys. You know the way to support the channel. All the varied and lovely ways you can support the channel. And I will see you tomorrow. Until next time, peace.